The weather is here. Let's go to Primal Iceland. Every day is upside down day in Soundschi land. Hi and welcome to the Soundschi land show, where everybody's upside down, and even in Iceland, where there are like figuratively speaking like 10 inhabitants.
A bit more, but yeah.
Even there, people love to stand on their hands, and I found myself a small handstand heaven. Well, actually, it's one of the coolest gyms I've ever been to, and it has 3 coaches, the owners, who really know their stuff. So I'm really excited to be here, and this is Helgi, who's actually a physicist. He has a PhD, but you kind of ended up here being the handstand teacher in Iceland, right?
Yeah. So it's a long story, but I'll try to keep it short. So I played football as a kid, and around when I was 14, I ended up tearing my adductors, both my left and right side, separate years, and then I tore both of them at the same time the 3rd year. After that, being 16, not being able to run, not being able to move, basically couldn't really do much other than just, sit, watch TV, play video games. I just quit football, quit moving, and kind of got this taste for exercising, basically, because I just couldn't. And you're 16, you're kind of going through this phase of growing up, so I just said, no, I'm not going to exercise. So I stopped. Played video games, studied physics for about 10 years, achieved my PhD, actually just early last year. But kind of in the middle of all of that, I realized that I was getting, first of all, overweight. I was close to 100 kilos.
What?
I could not reach my toes. I was working at a kindergarten between my master's and my PhD, and one morning we were sitting in class with the kids, like gym class with them, and I was trying to reach my toes. I was telling the kids actually to reach their toes, and I'm like, you do it too, and I would sit and I would be like, oh, I can't go further than this. At the time, I didn't do anything about it. Everyone just laughed. It was super funny. Oh, he's super stiff. But then about maybe 3 or 4 months later, had some dramatic things happen in my personal life that I won't go into, and decided to do something about my life. But at that point, super inflexible, super weak, with these nagging injuries in my hips, I decided, okay, what do I know how to do? I know how to run. I used to run a lot when I was playing football, so I'm going to go out for a run. Couldn't. After 5 minutes, I was just like in pain all over my body, had to limp back home and like take a shower of shame afterwards because I just felt like shit. But what I could do was stretch. So as a physicist, I wanted to research everything that I did. So I went on the internet and Googled how do you become flexible. I found Reddit, which is, I guess, a group of forums or something where people talk together, and I found like a flexibility subreddit, as they call them. I found what's called a bodyweight fitness subreddit, and I found that you can do a lot of exercises just in your own home. I tried to do some of the exercises, and this is actually the first time that I tried to stand on my hands. I haven't told you this yet, but the first time when I tried to stand on my hands 5 years ago, because I read it on the internet. I read like, oh yeah, it's great to learn how to stand on your hands.
Wait a second, so this was 5 years ago. You were kidding me.
So 5 years ago, first time in my life I'm trying to balance on my hands. Not even that, I just read on the internet that it's a great exercise to do a handstand.
And was it when you were still overweight?
Yes. I had just begun losing weight, but I had probably only at that time lost about 2 or 3 kilos, so I was still quite overweight. But I decided, okay, I've played football for years, I was always athletic, of course I can do a handstand against the wall, because gladly, I read that you should do a handstand against the wall at first. Very gladly, because this story does not end well. So I go up, chest to the wall, again, gladly. Then after about 5 seconds, I realized that I didn't read further in the paragraph than on how to get down. So I was up there, upside down. I had never been upside down before, except when I was like 5 or something. And I realized I don't know how to get down. I was living in a 25 square meter apartment in Portugal, just starting my PhD. And I just crashed down, kicked my shin right on the post of my bed, and limped for about 2 or 3 weeks. Hopefully, and understandably, I didn't do another handstand for a year. So I went on to stretch. I started eating better. I started doing kind of like boot camp exercises where you're running a lot, where you're not stretching, you're just running, you're doing push-ups, pull-ups, bodyweight squats, a lot of,
Biggest loser kind of stuff.
Basically. And in about 6 months, coupled with the simple stretching routine that I found on Reddit called Starting Stretching and Molding Mobility, I could run without any pain. And even when I was still playing football when I was 16, I always had to wear these really tight, like blue pants that would keep like my legs warm while I was running and before I started running. And I could even get rid of them. So just after 6 months of stretching and doing these things, I was just like fixed in a sense. I still felt pain if I did too much, and I couldn't do heavy squats because that kind of messed with my adductors and stuff. But I was getting way better than I ever had been. So I realized like flexibility is at least as important as everything else, probably even more important, especially for someone coming out of a background where you're super inflexible.
It's a prerequisite.
Basically, if you can't perform the movement that you're going to perform, you can't perform it, but people still do, right?
Yeah.
So I did this for about a year. So I started this about 5 years ago. And of course, what do you do then when you want to get flexible? What do you do when now that you've lost the weight and maybe you want to go to public class or something? You go to yoga. So I signed up for a beginner's course in what's called Ashtanga yoga. And I practiced that for about 2 years until it messed up my knees. So basically, the tight adductors from being torn led down straight to the inner meniscus of both of my knees, actually, and all the lotus poses and everything in yoga ended up really like kind of messing with them, and they're both torn and still are. I haven't actually gone into surgery or anything to fix them, but I can still sit and I can still do a lot of things, and that's actually with the help of Einar, who I'll tell you a bit about later. But basically, around the time when I'm quitting yoga, I'm realizing, wait, I need to identify something else. After I got into shape again, or kind of this first year or the first year or two, I had kind of started identifying as a yogi. And all my friends were like, oh yeah, Helgi, he's always doing yoga now. He's doing yoga now. He used to do physics, but now he does yoga and does all this crazy stuff, but he's doing yoga. But then I realized, like, wait, I'm not practicing yoga anymore. I'm not doing yoga. And I kind of got this bug that I wanted to balance on my hands. It was, you would see it, especially in yoga, you would see like, oh yeah, they're great teachers. They can all balance on their hands, but no one else can. So like, wait, maybe I should try to learn that. And initially I signed up for, gymnastic bodies. I did their course, did, the 6 months of the stick dislocates back and forth, until you could do it with some requirements, which was great. It opened up my shoulders, but I still couldn't do a handstand. That's usually how I put it. Like, yeah, I did 6 months of mobility, still couldn't do a handstand. At that point, I was still like, I was trying to kick up occasionally, but I wasn't really doing any proper training for it. So this is about 3 years ago. So that's usually when I started training. That's when I decided I'm going to learn a handstand. But like I said, I technically did my first 5 years ago and crashed.
Yeah.
And 4 years ago, I was still doing something like occasionally before boot camp practices. I was like, let's try to kick up. Didn't work, as it usually does. So 3 years ago, I did the gymnastic body stuff. Eventually, that led into that I wanted a more personalized program. So I did online coaching with Emmett Lewis, both for flexibility and handstands and strength.
How was that for you?
It was very nice. He is great. He is actually amazing in terms of that, because he is, especially for the flexibility stuff, he's a wizard, as people call him. It just seems that like he will look at your splits, whether it be middle splits or front splits, and he'll just say, you need this exercise. You do it, and just like everything happens. I am actually his most troublesome student. In terms of middle splits, because of my adductors. There seems to be some restrictions, so we're actually trying a lot of different stuff these days to see just like how can we unlock them, because I've actually had it happen now since I started training.
So what is it that has worked for you?
A lot of things have worked, but the interesting thing is that it only seems to work for a little bit. So let's see. So it was 2 years ago, just 2.5 years ago, when I actually started training for the middle splits. Because when I started doing yoga, and in Ashtanga yoga, if any of you know Ashtanga yoga, you might know that the primary series of Ashtanga yoga has very little to do with middle splits. It's mostly forward bending, and slight back bending, and some twists. But there's no adductor stuff, no like glute med strengthening or anything. So I got very flexible with forward bending, back bending, the rotations and all that, but no middle splits. And I basically just decided, like, I tore my adductors. Why would I even want to stretch them? It's at that point, you know, thinking back, that's a pretty stupid thing to think. But I understand myself back then, because as soon as I tried to go into any kind of middle splits, it was just like pain, 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 panic, 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 and I couldn't do anything. But then Emmett told me, like, sure, we can start working on it, so I started working on it. But these interesting things have been happening since, basically for the past 2.5 years. That is that it seems to come in about 6-month phases where I will progress. Actually, sometimes I'll progress quite a lot. There's pictures on my Instagram where I actually go quite deep into middle splits. You know, my calves will touch the floor. I think the max that I've ever done is my knees actually touching the floor and just the crotch kind of being a few centimeters off. But usually completely out of nowhere, I'll then regress. And it's not after a particularly difficult session or a heavy session. Usually it will be something like I'll completely max it out. I'll be fine for a few weeks. And then I'll kind of crash and lose basically everything I did in the past 3 months.
Interesting.
Which is some kind of like panic feeling in my adductors. How do you want to explain it? I have no idea. I have no idea what's going on. I'm a physicist, not a biologist or a physician or anything. But it seems to be that the adductors are somehow reliving the injury.
Yeah, well, probably they have some kind of muscle memory.
They have some kind of muscle memory from the injury, and they're like, dude, we don't like you doing this. So we're actually trying a lot of different and weird things. We're like, I'll do 3 different middle split sets, and all of them will be wearing a different t-shirt.
What?
Just to give a different sensation of the stretch.
All right.
So maybe the first one is on a tight t-shirt, so then you feel like, oh yeah, it's kind of tight. But then the next one might be shirtless, and the last one will be like a white t-shirt, because that will create like a different set, even though you're doing technically the same exercise. And sometimes I'll do it in socks on like these mats. Sometimes I'll do it on sliders, on a super slidey floor like the hardwood floor. And then you're doing the same exercise, but it's like the setup is a bit different to create this kind of image in your mind that you're actually doing a different thing, even though you're doing the same exercise. And it seems to be working, and there's been no regression so far. But the progress is a bit slower because I am also being more careful. I'm, hoping, But basically, after training with Emmett for about a year, he basically recommended Mikael to me. What was it? Over a year and a half ago, I think it was November 2016. Yeah. So my daughter was 1 year old. That's how I remember dates these days, how old my kids are, not how old I was or dates, it's just like how old my kids were. And I started online training with him. And this was it was twofold. The reason why I go to him is that, first of all, I felt like I wasn't making the progress I wanted to make towards the one arm. And I was having this nagging wrist injury, not injury, just pain in my left wrist. It was not an injury. I've actually been quite lucky with injuries. I haven't had any big injuries in my shoulders or anything. It's all been in the lower body. But
makes it easier for handstands.
Kinda, yeah. But I talked to him, and at first I'm just like, I want to get better so I can start progressing properly on the one arms and everything. And you've met Mikael, so you know how he is. And I guess you guys will have watched an interview with him, right? Yeah. So you will also know how he is. I'm just gonna make fun of him now, but no, but I sent him a message, like a personal message on Facebook, like, hey, my name is Helgi, I'm a student of Emmett's, and I would like to do online coaching with you. He sees the message and he doesn't reply, and I'm like, okay, sure, maybe he's busy or something. So I go do something else, change a diaper, I don't know what I was doing. I come back, and there's this huge wall of text from Mikael. So basically the first thing he did, rather than replying to me saying like, hi, okay, great, I'm into blah, 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 he just goes straight to my Instagram, looks at all of my handstand videos and writes commentary on them, what I'm doing wrong. So he's like, oh yeah, in this one, your chest is a bit arched. Oh, in this one, you're doing this incorrectly. In this one, you're doing this incorrectly. And we can fix all of this. But he's just like, and I'm like, yeah, I want to work with this guy. This is going to be great.
Really cool.
So I do half a phase basically with him. I train with him for 6 weeks because at this point we had also booked a workshop with him here through Motion Impulse. So I think, yeah. So I knew he was on the way, so I had this idea that I would do 6 weeks with him, and then he would actually show up here, we could do some in-person training, and then I would do another 3 months with him. And basically in those 6 weeks, what I thought would be me training for the one arm was just me fixing my line. Shoulder placement, doing a lot of looking at toe stuff, a lot of tucks, a lot of pikes, but in those 6 weeks, my line got much better. My wrist pain actually disappeared because it was due to my line. My line was making the weight shift too far forward in my hand. And I was also, because of that, I was a bit like misaligned, kind of in this plane rather than this plane, so I was a bit rotated as well, which meant that every time I dropped out of the handstand, I would go over my left wrist, and just doing that, train for 90 minutes, 2 hours every day, which I was doing at that point. It was just too much load on it. It wasn't a matter of some like injury or something being ruined, it was just a matter of you were putting too much stress on it. As Mikael says, it's load management most of the time. It's nothing to do with the right exercise. It's just like, don't do too much, whatever that means. It means different for you, it means different for me. So that's basically, and then from then on, I've just been doing like on and off online coaching with him, trying to chase him around the world, which is very hard when he's performing on ships in Asia and Africa, but And
he was just in Norway.
He was just in Norway, but I just had a kid, so
Right, yeah. So awesome that you just had your third child.
Yeah, thanks.
And how does that affect your practice now?
A lot. I've basically had to reduce my volume by a lot, almost by about half after he was born. But it's not because I don't have the time, because he will take long naps and I can still come here and do stuff, but it's mostly just when you don't sleep, especially if you don't get the continuous sleep. You're always waking up every 2 or every 3 hours. It just, you're a bit tired, but I'm still managing to progress. That's what I'm very happy about. I was a bit afraid that I would actually stall or even regress, but I am managing to progress still. So
that's really interesting. Because we were just traveling around Iceland for 9 days, and we were sitting in a car, basically living in the car. And sleeping there and eating there, and I was so scared that I would lose my handstands, and I just did like the minimal stuff just to keep it outside in the wind and rain of Iceland. But I came back here, and I actually feel like I improved.
No, I actually took the longest break that I've done in the past 2.5 years from handstands when he was born out. I actually did not take this long of a break when my daughter was born in 2015, but I did take a 10-day break now. Like, I didn't do any handstands. On the 9th day, I was like, shit, I wonder if I can do this still. Kicked up in my living room and still could. And on the 10th day, I go back and do a practice here at the gym, and it was fine. So what I felt that disappeared was my endurance. My balance was fine, actually a bit better, because I was completely rested. I was not. I had not slept well. I was eating like shit because you don't have time to make any dinners or anything.
But your shoulders were recovered.
But my shoulders were fine. They were like there was no soreness from any previous training or anything. So it was going really well. But my endurance was crap. I couldn't do the 3 hours that I usually did. And I think there is this weird balance, because I feel it, and I'm sure you do too. If you miss 1 day, especially if you miss 2 days, the day after coming back is usually going to be bad. And I remember Mikael always told me that, like taking 1 day off, it's okay, but you should probably try to do something. Taking 2 days off, you're going to have to work for it. You have to work for it to come back. But then if you rest for a bit longer, then your body seems to kind of like grab onto it better. So there's this danger zone of 2 to 5, 6 days where you're like, if you're going to rest long, you should at least rest a week, I think, but never rest somewhere between 2 or 7 days. I don't know.
I'm not sure about that.
No, probably not. But,
You know, I've noticed after, well, it wasn't a break for 9 days, but it was just minimal training, and I was really well recovered on the first day. Yeah. So it went well. Yeah. But the next day.
But then the next day is shit.
It was shit.
It's weird. I've also been wondering, is it like that you get a bit of beginner's luck again? It's like you come back after 10 days, like, oh yeah, I'm a beginner again. Now I'm really good, but then you start being shit again right afterwards. Yeah. Who knows? Yeah.
You have a lot of clients too, right? Like a lot of students, and we saw your handstand class yesterday. It was packed.
Yeah.
What exactly is it you're offering here at the gym?
So I think it's 4 things so we offer 3 types of classes, and then we offer private sessions as well. So let's start with the classes. So obviously we offer handstand classes, and I usually run them every other month, a bit more frequent than that, but it has to like align around all the holidays and stuff that we have. But I try to do like 4-week courses where we will meet once or twice a week with homework in between. Because one of the most important things that I feel is that people actually get the dedication of actually practicing on their own. So I think the homework part is very important. Rather than teaching them 3 or 4 times a week and actually holding their hand through the whole process, I find it helps much more to just teach them once a week maybe, and then they have to work out once or twice at home by themselves.
Do they do it?
No, but the people that do, they progress the most.
Yeah.
And the people that don't, I mean, this is going to sound pretty harsh, but they don't come back, so, you know. But maybe they need hand holding, so maybe it would be better to do some kind of mix between the two, and that's usually what I'm experimenting with a bit. So for example, this summer, I am actually doing 3 classes this week. But that's also because it's summer. It's very hard to get people to show up every Monday for 4 weeks in July. You're on vacation, you're not going to sign up for it. But we'll compactify it down to 1 week, and then it's going to be much better. And people, obviously, since it was packed, it worked. After the handstand stuff, I've also been doing a bit of handstands for kids. But they get, unless they have a background, they get tired very quickly. And that's again, it's this weird thing that we get. I get kids who are into gymnastics or into dance, and you know, they're very physically aware, they know how to do stuff, and they come here to kind of refine their handstand. They can kick up into a handstand, they can hold it for a few seconds, but they can't actually balance it. So that's kind of what they're here for. But then I also get the kids who are like, they don't fit into football, they don't fit into group sports, they don't even fit into the other sports where you have to kind of be like this, you know, the kind of get kind of buff and, you know, going crazy over something. They don't fit into it because they might be, you know, they might like something else, but they still want to, you know, move and do things. Dance is maybe too big of a step for them because it's kind of all out in the open. You have to kind of, it's, you know, 15-year-old guy who's been sitting in front of the computer for the last 3 years, you're not going to put him in a dance class. You should put him in a dance class because that's going to help him a lot, but he's not going to go there. But with the handstand stuff, it's kind of calm enough. It's still kind of, it's for yourself. It's not to, well, eventually it's going to be to show other people maybe, but at first it's just for you. You get flexible at the same time. So that's kind of the 2 groups we get, also with the adults. So we do get the people who are like, I'm in CrossFit, I need to walk on my hands, I need to learn how to stand on my hands. We get those like, and then we get like old gymnasts, like, oh yeah, I used to be able to stand on my hands, and then I saw you, and you can stand on your hands, I want to learn it again. And actually a lot of our students who are like our regular clients in the other classes, they're actually old gymnasts who, and this is exactly what they want to do. They're like, oh yeah, I used to do gymnastics. I don't like the adult gymnastic classes that I've been to because they're just like a lot of conditioning. So I want to come here to actually learn the skills that I used to be able to do. But then we also get the people who are like, yeah, I don't fit anywhere else, which is really nice, I think. It creates a really nice atmosphere because people are here because they want to be here. But then, apart from the handstand classes, we have the movement classes and the Wim Hof classes. So the movement classes, as the name suggests, is kind of like this. I like to say that they're inspired by the first generation of movement practices from Ido Portal. So it started with Einar, who you met yesterday, and today I guess as well. So he went to a seminar by Ido. He practiced on his own for about a year, I think. Did some online coaching with Ido, went to other seminars from other people. He has a black belt in Taekwondo, as he might have told you.
Yeah.
Which kind of, well, that's where he gets his intensity from. But then we've kind of been evolving it. So we interact a lot with Emmett, we interact a lot with Mikael. I've been doing seminars with Kit Laughlin of Social Therapy, and I'm actually doing his Part A, which is kind of like his teacher training, but I don't think he calls it a teacher training, but it is kind of the first step in starting to teach it properly in terms of like them educating you on how to teach it. So we're just taking this idea that you should take the best things from all kinds of practices and putting it into one practice. We're just taking that idea and what we feel works, not what someone else feels, but what we feel works. Is that the right way? No. But it's not right for anyone else either, because different things work for different people.
Do you have any specific way to assess what works for your clients and what not?
Well, I mean...
Or is it very individual?
It's very individual, and this will kind of tie into the private sessions as well. I mean, tight hip flexors, everyone sits too much in front of a computer with closed hips all day, and it starts much earlier because when we're 5, when we're 6, we are put on a chair in front of a teacher, and we'll take basically our largest growth spurts in our lives when we're 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, whatever. Like for me, I grew like 20 centimeters in one summer. Gladly I was playing outside and doing stuff, but I've heard larger stories. I've seen people grow like 60 centimeters in a year or something, just like they'll just grow. They'll wake up one day and just like, I just grew 3 centimeters. It's just like something's
maybe the guy behind the camera.
Yeah, maybe. No, but if you do that while you're sitting, your femur's going to grow. Yeah. Your quads and all the muscles are going to get left behind because you're not stretching. Are you going to stretch when you're 10? No. And you're going to stand up and you won't be able to extend anymore. That's going to then cause problems down the line, up the line, especially if you're doing sports. It's going to change the way that you're doing sports. So that's kind of the foundation we use for everything. This kind of, is there some imbalance in a muscle that's pulling on something that will then create these kind of imbalances to the rest of the body? So tight hips will usually lead down to the knees and up the back because, you know, stiffness in one part of the body will either bleed down or up. So for example, handstands, what will your tight shoulders do? You will either arch your back or bend your elbows. Tight hips, you will bend your knees or arch your back. So it's always either up or down. So we say that the flexibility kind of bleeds to the joint either above or below. So that's usually what we think about. And you know, have you looked at any of the private sessions when they're doing them yet?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah,
you have these kind of walkers?
Yeah, so it's just like, you know, walkers for that old people use, but that's usually because say you're stretching your hip flexors, you want to be as upright as possible to extend that. So it's just to help them. And a chair in your home works just as fine. Yeah, we used yoga blocks in my own. Right, yeah. So, but a lot of the people we get in the private sessions, and this is probably a good time to switch over to that, is that we get people from all around. So we get people, so actually just, what was it, 2 or 3 weeks ago, Thor gets a client. She could not walk up the stairs here. So she went for a meniscus surgery in, I think, October last year. And originally she signed up for Wim Hof courses because she heard like, oh yeah, the cold and the breathing can help you recover. But then like she found out that we're on the 2nd floor. And she's just like, I don't think I can walk up. And she found out that our cold tubs, you have to, you know, step into them. They're actually quite high up. And she's like, I don't think I can do that. So we're like, maybe okay, you know. If you want, we also have these private sessions where we work with you. So we offered her that, and she came in for those, and she started to feel a bit better. So we have that on one end of the spectrum. On the other end of the spectrum, we've also been doing strength training programming for national level gymnasts. You know, training for, you know, airplanes, multis, and elevators, and all these kind of things. We can't do them, but the methodology kind of allows us to program the strength training for it because technically strength training program is quite simple.
Yeah.
But then you just have to be, with all the gymnastic moves, you have to be a bit smart with the levers and how can you kind of regress the motions for them to try it. Because a lot of the problems here in Iceland with gymnastics, because, let's say this. So
now we can cut it
Icelandic gymnasts they're good, but they're not great. But we have great CrossFitters, we have great strong men, but we don't have great gymnasts. We have good gymnasts. They're good, and and especially in the group gymnastics, where they're doing more of the choreography and all that, we have great gymnasts there. But in the strength training part, like on the rings and the apparatus, we are not getting amazing results, which we obviously want. You know, we were at the World Cup, and you know.
And many good athletes have come from Iceland.
We have a lot of good athletes.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not saying that there's one simple fix to this, but I think a part of the problem is that when the Soviet Union split apart, we got a lot of immigrants from former Yugoslavian places. Didn't speak English, didn't speak Icelandic. They came, and a lot of them were gymnastic trainers. So they came in and they couldn't communicate to the kids what they were supposed to do. So they would just show them. So it was a lot of like, do this, do that, do this, not explain why or do it. And then now these second generation teachers are teaching, and they're just doing it again. Like, how do you do an iron cross? Try.
Yeah.
So one of the first examples of this that we actually got here was a guy who's on the national team for Iceland gymnastics. He comes in, he's doing the cross, and it twists. So as he starts going down, he's straight, around 45 degrees with his arms, he twists to the side. What's wrong? Well, his teachers or his trainers just say, don't twist. So that was like, how do you fix it? Don't twist. So when he was practicing, they would stand over and say, don't twist, don't twist, don't twist, scream at him, don't twist. In the competition, they would scream at him, don't twist. He twisted.
Of course.
So he comes here, what are we, so there's some obviously, because of the twist, there's some imbalance. How do we look for that balance? Okay, shoulders were fine. Actually, they were not fine, they were pretty stiff, but that's kind of to be expected for someone who's doing crosses and not these and stuff. So we started looking at his core. Plank, obviously fine. Plank on one arm, obviously fine. So where do you go from there? So we make him do a plank with one arm on the ring and the other arm off the floor. One side, perfectly fine. There's no movement. We were actually super impressed when he does it. Like, wow, this is great. Does the other side, can't even hold it. We fixed that. He goes to next competition, straight iron cross. So, awesome. so that's usually, so the private sessions usually revolve around this. Whether it's for the gymnast, the football player, the swimmer, the whatever athlete, or for the person who just has back pain because they're sitting all day. That's usually the easy fix. You sit all day, that means that your front line, whole front line, it's like abs, quads, hip flexors, psoas, even adductor, like everything here is tight. It's going to pull you into that position even when you try to stand up, which will then kind of try to be compensated by your back, which will usually lead to back pain. Or, the guy who gets pain when jumping up into a header in football or something. And then it's just like looking at the movement pattern. What are the prerequisites for that movement pattern? Do you have them? If the answer is no to any of them, we fix that. And usually then the problem will mostly get fixed. Obviously then they're moving in a new movement pattern, and then they have to learn how to use that movement pattern. So there's usually some kind of re-education going on after that. But that's usually kind of what we do in the private sessions for people. And it's ranging from, like I said, people who can barely walk over to national level gymnasts and everything in between. So
awesome.
Yeah. And then we kind of continue this on to the classes that we do. So when we're teaching people how to stand on their hands, we use the same kind of idea. So we just call it mobility, stability, load. If you don't have the mobility or flexibility to do something, there's no way you will be able to create any stability. So why should you load that position?
Yeah.
If you put too much load, your stability will break down, and then your mobility will break down. So and that's basically the only thing we'll ever write down, because everything else seems to follow from this. So
Yeah, that's like the most basic thing.
Basically, and everything just follows. So,
yeah.
But then basically the Wim Hof classes. For those of you who don't know Wim Hof, he's as I usually put him. Thor would definitely describe him differently. I just say he's a crazy Dutchman who does a lot of crazy stuff involving cold things. That's basically how I describe him, which is great.
They call him Iceman.
Iceman. But it basically turns out that this exposure to cold, coupled with breathing exercises, has amazing benefits.
For the immune system.
For the immune system, for blood circulation, for your respiratory system, for pain, chronic pain.
For your mobility.
For mobility, for like, we've been experimenting with like, we'll be doing strength sets. So one of these things that we've been doing is that we will do like 3 rep max of some movement, like push-ups, pull-ups, whatever. You'll find a pull-up and push-up progression that you can do for 3 reps. And we'll do like on the minute, we'll do the pushing variation, then we'll breathe until the next minute, and then we'll do the pulling variation, and then we'll do the Wim Hof breathing in between, and we're just doing that. And you know, if any of you know the Wim Hof breathing, it's kind of you kind of get a bit more oxygen from doing it. And it seems like just from trying this, we were able to add 2 or 3 sets without fatiguing as fast. So it seems to be like really helping. So there seems to be a lot of like avenues for research. And so obviously I'm very interested in this. My background comes from research.
There has actually been
so then they've done
where they put E. coli bacteria.
Yeah, so they put a dead E. coli bacteria. So my mother works with E. coli bacteria at the hospital here. Okay, so when she read this, it's like had to have been dead, because otherwise people die from getting live bacteria in them. So a dead E. coli bacteria was like injected into Wim. Actually Wim Hof at first, but then he trained I think 12 people to do this, and then were 12 untrained individuals who also did it. And basically the people who had been doing the Wim Hof method, they were able to contain the effects. Or like suppress, I guess is the better word. They were not, they didn't completely get rid of the effects, but they would be able to like suppress them and kind of contain them in a way. Through the breathing, through having been exposed to cold and kind of, and actually in Iceland we've been doing this for a long time. It just wasn't called the Wim Hof method. We've been swimming in the ocean for as long as we've been here, I think. There's some of the Norse, like the Icelandic sagas, there's this guy called Grettir, and in one of his sagas he swam to one of the islands here, you know. So there's like, and there's a lot of people, if you will go, and maybe you should actually go there. There's this place called Nautholsvík here in the city, which is like an artificial beach. They imported white sand to put on the beach, and you can go swim in the ocean, and there's a hot tub there and changing rooms and everything. So you should check it out if you're interested. But we've been doing it for a long time, and I had actually been swimming in the ocean long before I heard of Wim Hof. So, and that was mainly because it's like when I started training again 5 years ago, you know, DOMs and all that, I got very sore, and people said like you should go swim in the ocean to get rid of the DOMs, and it helped.
Yeah.
I would work out, I would go to work, I would then go either to yoga class or to the ocean to swim, and I would feel so much better. I felt like it helped at least as much as stretching to get rid of DOMs. So it felt great. So
yeah, I had the same experience.
And if you go there on like most days, even in the winter, even in January, you will see tens, like 20, 30, 40, even 50 people early January who will be sitting in the hot tub and then going for a cold dip in the ocean. And at that time, the ocean can sometimes go below 0 because of the salinity. So it's, yeah. So that's
basically training the vascular system to adapt to the temperature, to dilate and contract.
Yeah, it's a muscle, basically. That's how Thor puts it. So he's the expert.
We'll talk to him then.
Yeah.
Great. One last question.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for beginners who start out on a handstand journey?
I mean, technically, there is probably a best way to learn a handstand, but I picked this up very early, mainly because I was, like I said, I was overweight, I was inflexible, and there's this thing that people call paralysis by analysis. And the opposite of that, I think, is the best program for you is the one that you do.
I love that advice.
So, especially when you're beginning, it's very easy to think like, oh shit, should I do 3 sets or 5 sets? Should I do 8 reps or 5 reps? Should I do this or that? Should I do this exercise or that exercise? If you're only thinking about that and you don't do the exercises, it doesn't matter. The important part is that you actually do the work.
Yeah.
Once you've gotten into the kind of habit or pattern, or you've actually managed to fit it into your daily life for weeks or even months or years.
Because that's the hard part.
That's the hard part. It's the consistency. And at first, sure, it matters. I'm not going to tell you that just do anything. I mean, I tried that, didn't work.
Well, but everybody starts like that, right?
That's
and
the thing. So you start, and then you realize that there is something more to it.
Yeah.
My epiphany was in a park in Portugal during my PhD. I was trying to kick up on some gravel, you know, super banana. I thought I was holding balance, but I wasn't. I was just, you know, I was, how did Buzz Lightyear say it? I don't remember in English. Yeah, but there's this thing like you're not like Woody actually tells Buzz Lightyear this, like you're not flying, you're falling with style.
Yeah.
That's basically what I was doing at that point, and this was about 4.5 years ago. And at one point, and I always joke about this, where I'm not sure if I imagined this or if this was actually real. I'm in this park and kicking up with a handstand, and I'm, you know, not flying, I'm just falling in style. And then this like maybe 12-year-old Portuguese girl shows up, like looks at me, sees me kick up, sees me fall down, laughs, and says, "More strong here," and then just walks away, disappears into the forest or something, you know. So I'm like, wait, maybe there is more to it, and that was kind of the turning point. That's when I kind of like started reading about it, started actually thinking that there might be more to this than simply throwing your legs in the air and trying to catch it, and there obviously is. So.
Yeah, but I guess we've all started with just doing anything,
that's
and I think
thing.
that's, you just said it exactly the way it is.
Yeah.
You just have to start somewhere and do
somewhere.
it, because then you'll get interested, and then you'll start like to figure out what works.
And it's also like, should everyone want a handstand press? Yes, but but it's okay not to want it. It's okay to be fine with just conquering the fear of being upside down, because that's also a great part of the gym here, is that we don't only get the people who are like super enthusiastic
who want to have a one arm.
and want to have a one arm and want to press and want to do all the crazy stuff. A lot of the people, they just come in and they maybe want to try something new. They want to conquer the fear of being upside down. Maybe they want some balance on the floor, and that's great, but maybe that's all they want. And that's fine, because maybe they just have something else that they want to focus on.
Maybe they just want to experience their body in a new way.
So a lot of, for me, the teaching, both in terms of like for me and how to like convey what I'm trying to teach, and also just for me personally and trying to make the students understand it, is that different people have different goals. So yesterday in the class, for example, I have a woman, she's been training since September last year. I think she's born 1963, same year as my mother. No background in any gymnastics or anything. She came to the first handstand class in August last year. Couldn't kick up, could barely get up against the wall, nothing. Yesterday, I managed to spot her in a handstand. Like, this is your point. Now you just need to learn how to hold it. And she's just like, I just want to learn this before I turn 60. Like, I just want to like be able to kick up. It looks like I'm still, and then come down. Yeah. In the same group, I had the former gymnast who came to the beginner. Yes. Could already press off the floor. Yeah. Then you have to teach the same group, the same exercises, but you have to be able to scale in for everyone, and you have to be able to explain to everyone like, your goals are different to your goals, are different to your goals, and that means that your training is going to be very different. So I try to always keep it very open. But obviously, if someone comes to me and says, I want to learn the one-arm handstand, I'll say it takes a lot of time, it's very hard, and you have to be very committed, and you have to do it right. But not everyone is there. So it's very different. And I think like teaching in this place has really helped it, because we have the whole spectrum.
Yeah.
And it's so great. And we have, because sometimes, you know, I'm teaching handstands and there's a private session in the corner. And that has actually worked to kind of like spark the interest in the people who have maybe been, we've had people, you know, past 15 years, I've been in constant agony in my back. I thought I had no hope of never like being able to exercise again. They've done a few private sessions. They're still in the corner, you know, stretching and everything. But then they're looking out like in the same place that I'm now learning how to actually be not in pain. I can actually learn this stuff as well. So, so we think about it as not like separate things, not like private sessions, handstands, movement, Wim Hof. It's all the same thing. We use it for different things.
Yeah.
So, and it's like at different parts they start to overlap and everything. So, yeah.
Lifestyle.
Basically, and that's kind of what we want to advocate. Basically, it's the
Yeah.
primal lifestyle, not just, you know, the individual components of it.
Well, I'm telling you, I fell in love with this
Yeah.
gym. Like, I told you the very first day, can I work here?
It's very easy.
It's so cool. I feel like home.
Yeah. That's
And
basically what we want.
yeah, I think it's really cool what you're doing here, and I hope that more people gain interest and maybe that more people come to take workshops or to give workshops, because I feel like this is a place where there's a great energy and people are open to learning from each other.
We've had a lot of work. We've had, I think, 6 workshops so far since we opened here last July. No, we've had 5 here, but we have 2 in our old place. So, but we're always trying to bring in new people, because it helps a bit, because we can usually have people do layovers. So if someone from the States is going to Europe to do a workshop tour, we'll be like, just stop in Iceland and do a workshop as well. It's on the way. Same for if you go from Europe to America. So we've had Yuri Marmerstein, we've had Emmett Lewis, we've had Mikael, we had Fighting Monkey in May. We're actually having a Garage Gym Girl in November.
So cool, I saw it.
Yeah, so usually we organize it through Motion Impulse. So if people are interested into that, you can actually look on Motion Impulse to find what workshops we're hosting. We're the only gym in Iceland that's hosting these workshops, so it's very easy to find. And there's always cheap flights here as well, like usually from both Europe and
you just
the
have
States.
to book early enough.
Yes. Which is good. There's usually early bird on the workshops, so yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you so much.
No problem.
For being on the show, and I wish you all the best.
Yeah, you as well. Do you know Kit Laughlin?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's the opposite of Kit Laughlin. Because Kit Laughlin is like everything's like when you're stretching, he'll come over to you and put his like hands on your tummy and say like, "Please, my hand, go soft." It's just like.